Hi there, and welcome. My name is Adam, and I'm here on behalf of the Center for Autism Students Association. Here with us today is Scott Wilson, who has graciously donated his time to tell us a bit about his personal perspective with ASD. Scott, take it away.
Thank you, and good afternoon to everybody, and good morning whenever you're watching this. It's my pleasure to take part in this. When Adam asked me if I would come and share our story, I definitely leaped at the chance because I want to speak to the parents of children who are just newly being diagnosed and parents who have been down the road with autism. It was 15 years ago that my son was through the assessment service at the Glenrose Hospital. And we started out on this journey with a very uncertain future, an uncertain outcome. And we can come today with a story that not should only inspire people, but really rally them and motivate them to say that this should not be just a one-off story. My wife and I have two children, both of whom are diagnosed on the autism spectrum. My wife works full-time as a dental assistant, and I've been self-employed, and currently I'm actually a family-centered care coordinator at the Glenrose Hospital. So 15 years ago I sat in a waiting room that today I walk through to get to my office. My role at the Glenrose is to coordinate the voices of families, to help bring some balance to the clinical perspective, and to really find out what it is that we were able to do for my son in particular, and have the outcome that we've had. David's journey has been spectacular. As I said, my daughter has been diagnosed with the same spectrum disorder. Both my children have a diagnosis of pervasive developmental disorder, not otherwise specified. For those who don't know what PDD-NOS is, it's basically on the autism spectrum. And my daughter is actually, because of our son's experience, become the poster child for the benefits of early intervention. So if I didn't tell you my daughter was diagnosed, you probably would never know. And so today I'm going to focus on my son's journey and how we went through that and where we are, and then I'll tell you exactly where it is that we are today. The challenge that we had initially was because we didn't have a clear diagnosis. We didn't know exactly what it was that we were dealing with. We had some labels. We had a label of mild mental handicap. We had a label of severe communication disorder. We had a label of obsessive compulsive disorder. We weren't sure if that was just a coping mechanism for my son or if it was an actual disorder, but there was enough diagnostic criteria to make the OCD diagnosis for what I later became aware of was the need for funding at school. But regardless, we set about on our course, and when we went to the Glenrose, we actually had discovered an early intervention program with Alberta Education, and a funding model called program unit funding. We were looking for a play school that would take a child that wasn't potty trained, and we stumbled our way into this world of supports for children with disabilities, and that became our indoctrination into this world that later became known as PDD-NOS, or Autism Spectrum Disorder. Quite frankly, we didn't really care what they called it. We were concerned about our son and what his needs were, and we were focused in on that. And that began our understanding of what autism spectrum disorder was. It wasn't that it smacked us in the face and we went on Google and we learned all about it. We sort of found our way into it, always keeping the needs of my son front and center, and his journey. And so it wasn't until actually the world hit us in the face when my son was coming into grade 1. And the funding models were changing. Program unit funding was coming to an end, and the schools were going to take up the charge to serve the needs of my child. And there was really a disconnect at that point. Going into grade 1, all the things that were working, they had stopped doing. They had to reassess him, even though we had just gotten assessments done. We knew or had thought we knew what we were talking about. And it was a real challenge at that point for us, as it is for most parents. They find that the schools are wholly unprepared for their children. And one of the best pieces of advice that I got was, the doctor at the Glen Rose said that our job as parents is to build bridges for our child. That every child has gaps in their development, and in my son's case, it was just had the potential to be more debilitating for him. So the reality is that our children don't have time for us to align the resources of the world and make the planets all work in sync and all the rest of that stuff. We have to figure out how do we get this fixed, and so that became actually my parenting responsibilities. My job was not to become the expert in my son's diagnoses. What all the ramifications, what all the indicators are for autism, all the different types of therapies and stuff. There are experts that know that and know that well, and we have them here in Alberta. Here in Edmonton is a center for that internationally. But my job became to be the voice for my child, because my child didn't have his voice. He had a severe communication disorder. He didn't have the words that he needed in order to communicate what was going on around him. So the biggest challenge that he had was how to communicate that things weren't working for him, and the only way he had to do that was his behavior. And of course, the schools look to behavior, and of course, behavior in a classroom has to be dealt with, because there are safety issues, there are learning issues, there are just appropriateness, be it in a classroom or be it in a restaurant or be it on an airplane. As soon as the behavior becomes the issue, then you're not able to deal with the root cause of the issue. And so that became my parenting response, and my parenting responsibilities was to stay focused on my child, and to recognize that my son was going to teach me everything that he needed to know. So we didn't really have the supports that are typical of a child who's diagnosed, coming out of the assessment, and here's your diagnosis, and here's your funding, and here's your intervention therapy response plan, and all the rest of that stuff. We were very early in the game. At the time that my son was diagnosed, the rates of diagnosis were 1 in 250 kids. Now it's 1 in 68, 1 in 44 boys. And so now we're getting a lot better at identifying children like my son. And as I say, when I look to our experience with my daughter, because of the road that we went down with my son, we're able to intervene earlier so that behaviors didn't become the issue. We could deal with the root causes of it all. And I think that the biggest challenge that we have is to recognize that if we're basing everything on the funding models, if we're basing everything on inclusion without supports, because inclusion in a classroom is more than just placement in a classroom. And, there needs to be the supports for the child. I've always said I've been more concerned about how my son's been working or doing at school than in school. I was hoping that the academics could catch up. But the most important piece to us was how is he doing socially? Is he able to make friends? And I wish I could go into some of the stories that how that all unfolded. But if you fast forward to today, here's a boy who was he's a young man today, so more than 20 years old. He was diagnosed on the autism spectrum at the age of 5. He was. We were told that he had a mild mental handicap, that he would struggle in school, and he did. And that we weren't even sure if he would graduate with a diploma. In fact, up till grade 10, he was scheduled on track not to do that. But then everything seemed to click for him, and in grade 11 he transitioned over to a diploma program, and he went on, not only got his grade 12 diploma, but also upgraded his courses so that he could get admitted into NAIT. And so if we fast forward 15 years, the child who was once diagnosed with a mild mental handicap in his first semester of NAIT got 1A and 2A pluses. And so that's an example of what is possible when we align around the needs of a child. And when we look to the funding as sources and not barriers. There will never be enough money, especially with the need that we're having seeing today and the evolution of it. There it used to be when we first started, there would be one, maybe two children with autism in an elementary school. Now there may be one in every class. It is getting that prevalent. Everybody knows somebody who knows somebody. And so the challenge is to understand what our role is as parents, and to realize that our goal here is to drive this to a peer response level where kids can actually interrelate with our children, understand what it is that they're doing, why it is that they're doing it, and how to support them, because in the absence of that understanding, the only other option is bullying and ridiculing. 9 out of 10 children at Middleton Middle School in New Jersey, 9 out of 10 kids that had Asperger's syndrome were being bullied on a daily basis. And with that model of funding, the psychologists came in and developed a peer mentoring program that turned that around so that 1 in 10 were being bullied maybe once a week. And it's a total turnaround, and that is our challenge, is to create that environment in the school system, and so that it can be actually part of the preparation for the real world called employment. 8 out of 10 adults with developmental disabilities are unemployed as adults. That's not acceptable. 50% of those children, those adults, like my son, will go on to get a post-secondary education. It's not that they're not employable, it's that we've spent all our time working to prepare the child for the world, but we spent very little time preparing the world for the child. And so one of the things that I found myself doing on this journey was talking about getting involved in advocacy when I didn't even realize that that's what it was. I found myself providing advice for the government of Alberta on 2 advisory committees, one when they were developing the legislation, Family Supports for Children with Disabilities, and another one for parents, which is still in action today. And so through that we gained an understanding of the reality of the world, of the government, because it's easy to say the government should fund us more money. There are certain realities and constraints and circumstances that we all need to understand, and at the end of the day, I think it's the resiliency of a parent looking at the needs of their child and doing what parents do, and all parents do this. It's not just the ones that we see on the 6 o'clock news. Having a parental response that recognizes what it is, the strengths of their child, and leveraging off of those and helping to identify the challenges that their children have and how to overcome them. Just as a case in point, when David was 10 years old, we wanted to put him into a Taekwondo program, martial arts of some kind. And I went to the local club and I watched the class and I thought, you know what, this is not going to work well. It's there's too many demands, too many expectations. It's too chaotic. There's too many kids doing too many crazy things around in the class. And so what we were worried about was having a very frustrated child that could kick me in the head. So, but fortunately, because we looked at this as a team effort, this is not just great parenting. This is a village rallying around the needs of the child. And I happened across an occupational therapist by the name of John Rivero. And at my kitchen table, we started Young Masters Taekwondo, which is still running today. David has gone on to get his black belt. He is working on a 2nd degree black belt and is an instructor in Young Masters to be a role model for the children and an inspiration for their parents, that there's nothing that is impossible. Because of that experience in Taekwondo and the confidence that's and the discipline and the focus that has all come out of that, he's able to function at work. In fact, he was an Employee of the Year. He earned a government award from the government of Alberta. The government that once he was destined to be dependent upon for his support as an adult under the Assured Income for Severely Handicapped People. That same government was recognizing him as one of Alberta's top youth. Not a disability-related award, but just a youth-related award of just the amazing things that our kids are accomplishing today. And so I want to leave it with that, and just Every journey is going to be different. Every child is different. And one thing that I can tell you is having two children with autism spectrum disorder. If you met two children with autism, you've met two children. There is no one cookie cutter, experience of autism. It is as unique as children are, and as unique as families are. And with that, I'll turn it over to questions.